With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad.
I'm Rebecca Lindland.
We're all finally back in the States. I guess, Rebecca, you were the only one who was missing, but yeah, welcome back.
Thank you so much. And it's been a lot. I've missed it, and it's nice to be back, and I appreciate you guys accommodating my schedule, so thank you.
Not a problem. I'm just glad that you didn't have any gastrointestinal issues, from drinking or eating something inappropriate, or that your body was not accustomed to. Let's put it that way.
Do you know what's really funny? Is first of all, I am too, but second of all, yesterday, which was my first full day back, I actually did have an upset stomach, which is hysterical because the first meal I had coming back, of course, was pizza because I love pizza, and it actually upset my stomach, which was hysterical. So, so I'm trying to ease back.
Let's dig into this a little bit. Pizza from where?
Oh, from this. It's called Our Curry Pizza in the little village of Cascab near where I live,
All right.
And my buddy Nick. I have him on speed dial as I come back from the airport, and they make this amazing, like Italian style thin crust pizza, and then also these strombolis that have all different kinds of meat in them and that are just to die for. And they actually have amazing salads as well, which I've had once or twice.
So that sounds like it. I very much appreciate the whole take a road trip for pizza thing. We actually found really good pizza in Kennebunk.
Oh, nice.
Which was amusing to me because it's like it's vacation land Maine.
Yes.
It's seafood up here, but there was good pizza there, and so that's one of the things that I like to be aware of where the good pizza might be. And then you hit the Midwest and the pizza is very different. Not bad, different.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, every region's got their own unique take on, a lot of different kinds of foods. I mean, here, we have in Michigan, we have pizza with corners on it.
Yeah. Look, there's nothing wrong with that.
But the beauty of that is, you get more corners, more edges, that crispy edge on the pizza, and it's great. Buddy's Pizza is fantastic.
What's the other one that's been there? Lou Malnati's. That might be a Chicago thing.
I think that sounds more like Chicago.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody's completely bored now, and so we're back for episode 101, and we're going to talk about what we're driving first. So, Rebecca, you had the Rav4. Sam, you've got a Nissan Maxima SR, and I have the F-150 Raptor. So we'll talk about those, and then topics-wise, we're going to hit the. If we get to them all, we might get off on a tangent. So we'll try to hit all.
Tangent? Us?
Yeah,
no.
us. But we want to talk about the mid-engine Corvette apparently twisting up from its raw power, Rivian's modular design, and Cadillac's new badging scheme. Yet another badging scheme for Cadillac that's going to clarify everything. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. And Rebecca, let's let you go because you're back on U.S. soil and you're driving the Rav4 Hybrid. So,
yes, and I'm now driving on the right side, not the correct, but the right side of the road again, which is very exciting. So I've got I believe it's a pre-production. I actually don't even have a window sticker for it, a Moroni for it, but it's the 2019 Toyota Rav4 Hybrid. And this is an all-wheel drive vehicle. It's got a 176 horsepower, 2.5 liter inline four gas engine, and then it has a 2-speed CVT with overdrive for the transmission. And
that's a little unusual. A 2-speed CVT?
Yeah, that's what it says. I know.
I guess maybe they put in a second gear set, to give it like an extra long, range for highway.
Yeah, I'll see. I will search the press site as we go. But I think there's something to that about taking some of the bandiness out of it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I've driven, I probably have put about 125 miles on it. I picked it up at JFK. And the first thing I noticed was it just whines. I mean, it's I feel like it's constantly kind of straining. First of all, it looks great.
Yeah, I do love the new design of the new RAV4. It looks really, really good.
I haven't always liked these really expressive designs, but I don't know. There's just something really appealing about this one. And it's got blacked out rims, and it's kind of cool. It's just, I noticed people looking at it. I drove by a construction site the other day, and I noticed, the cop that was there definitely looked, I looked back and he was looking at the car.
Was it the car?
Yeah. Okay, I might have smiled at him. He was cute. But, it's the kind of car that you look and say, gosh, what is that? So I really like the looks of it a lot. This one is the silver sky metallic. It's got a midnight black roof. It's got a nice big sunroof, really cool interior. So the car itself, I was trying to kind of get into the mindset of somebody who would buy this car. And one of the things that, what kind of commute would this be appropriate for? When I was driving it on the Merritt Parkway in the southern part of the state here, there's a lot of hills. And I actually put it in active cruise control to see how it would respond. It kept the speed pretty good. I had it at 65, again, sort of trying to mimic a typical driving situation. And it did okay. I just felt like it constantly was straining to go up and down the hills, even when I took it out of active cruise.
Yeah, well, so to be fair, the Merit's like that with a lot of cars that have 3,500 pounds and 200 horsepower.
Yes.
It's hilly. But
is.
I think that it's probably made worse in the hybrid because of that. It still has a CVT and it doesn't have a ton of power, so it's just going to hunt,
It exactly. And then, certainly I had it on 95 today then, which is a flatter drive up to my mom's place. And it was a little bit better, but at the same time, if you're trying to, kind of zip in and out of traffic or something, or you need torque, it's not really there. Around town, it's great. I think it's a perfect car if you've got the type of lifestyle that's running a lot of errands, if you're, just constantly going back and forth to school, to work, in this kind of errand sort of life. I think it's great. I'm getting 35 miles per gallon, which is fantastic. And the car itself is terrific. I bought a couple of really cool vintage Lucite chairs today, and it swallowed them up with no problem. So there's plenty of room, really comfortable. My mom got in and out of it very easily. I'm getting in and out of it. It's a comfortable ride. There's heated seats, heated steering wheel. Overall, I think it's really nice. I think it goes for about $35,000. So it's not cheap, but again, the gas mileage is terrific. The only thing I have to mention is that one thing that ergonomically I didn't love, the heated steering wheel button and the trunk release button are right next to each other.
Ooh, that's not good.
Right? And you actually have to look around the steering wheel to find the heated steering wheel button. And so it's very awkward ergonomically. I was really surprised by that. And I didn't want to press the trunk release button while I was driving in case it actually opened.
Does it have an electric hatch on it?
It does.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe that they've done something where it doesn't open if the car is at speed, but
yeah, now you've got to try it.
Well, that's the thing, right? So I'm going to take it. There's a little lane across from my street that I can try it on. And so I'll do that in the morning. But that was the only thing that was really, the layout was very disappointing for me and from that standpoint.
Yeah, I tend to like the heated steering wheel switches. Sometimes I can't find them on certain cars, and the places I tend to go are usually it's buried in some sort of sub menu in the touchscreen. But also, a lot of cars have it on the side of the steering column, like where the stalks are mounted. So some of them are there.
Well, the Maxima I was driving had it on the left hand side of the dashboard, like on the lower part of the dashboard. So it had the heated steering wheel and the lane keeping assist buttons right next to each other.
Yeah, this is similar. It's on the left side, but as I said, what was surprising to me was, first of all, I couldn't see it, and second of all, right next to it is the trunk release.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you pop the trunk and drive around like that, you'll get carbon monoxide poisoning, and you won't need to worry about how warm your hands are. So it's fine. So the transmission, I looked up the press release. What they talk about with the hybrid is big changes in the gear train yield significant efficiency improvements. The new transaxle mounts the electric motors coaxially rather than inline. So I'm trying to think, like, that means there's sort of they're around the same axis, but they're not necessarily like on the same shaft.
Right. So the traditional Toyota hybrid system up until now, you've had two like kind of disc-shaped motors that were stacked next to each other, and then the planetary gear set. This one, you've got one motor. Actually, you've got a hollow motor, and then the second one is inside of it.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. So from a packaging perspective, that's kind of interesting. I think the thing that it mentions here is about having this secondary reduction gear as a parallel shaft gear rather than the planetary gear. So just to
that one I can't picture that in my head. I need a diagram for that.
Right. Well, basically, one of the issues with with the hybrid, most of the Toyota style hybrid systems up until now, the way they do the CVT functionality, it's not like a steel belt, like just a plain old regular CVT, but they actually for a planetary gear set that you have in an automatic transmission, you lock different components, either the ring gear or the sun gear
or one of the planets,
or the planet gears, and you lock one of those and ground it to the case of the transmission with clutches, so with mechanical clutches. The way the way the Toyota style hybrids have done it up until now, it's actually one of the two motors that is tied to the planetary gear set, and depending on how much current you feed into it, you can basically get a variable lock, which effectively gives you that continuously variable gearing. And so it sounds like what they've got here is this parallel gear that's going around it, so that when it engages this, which is probably at higher speeds, it essentially bypasses the electric drive altogether and just does a straight through gear drive.
Oh, I see. So it's like a direct drive kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's much more efficient. There's almost no mechanical loss from that. And that's actually the basic premise of what GM did back 12, 13 years ago with the two-mode hybrid system.
With the Volt, right? Because that was the big thing that everybody got
but even before
arms.
that, with the two-mode hybrid that they did on the SUVs.
I forgot about those.
it had those extra clutches added in to lock the planetary gears, so that you had higher efficiency when you were driving at highway speeds, and also like if you were towing or something.
Huh. Well, I mean, it seems like it would just make it settle down a lot more on the highway, and if you're not trying to climb the hills in Western Connecticut, it would definitely give you that increased fuel economy when you're out sort of doing 65, 70 miles an hour, where you don't need, the hybrid's not going to be useful. So it was interesting to hear you say as well that, like, it doesn't feel like it has torque available. Did you try the sport mode?
I haven't tried the sport mode yet. So I've got to play with that a little bit more. I really wanted to kind of see how I could do maximizing on the fuel economy, and I was concentrating on that. It just, I don't know. it is a vehicle that I feel like you're giving up quite a bit. But if fuel economy is your main goal, then I think it's great, but, and again, I think it's, it's a great size for around town, for running errands and getting, pretty good fuel economy. So it's just, if that's your focus, then I think it's a good choice.
Well, they've reduced overlap too. They don't make the Prius V anymore. So if you wanted something larger than the regular Prius and more of like a crossover, this is your choice.
Right.
Does it have nav?
So it has that stupid N2. Oh, sorry. It has that. So
no, that's right.
It has Toyota N-Tune in it.
Which is,
and it's got it doesn't have Android Auto. So
yeah, I think they're going to be adding that soon because they just launched that on the Avalon. I think they added Android Auto support there, and I think they're going to roll it out to the rest of the lineup soon.
So I actually had a very hard time just connecting my phone for some reason. It took a few different tries, and eventually, obviously, I knew it could happen. I just wasn't sure what it wanted from me, so that was a little annoying. But what I don't like about having to use the N-Tune or being forced into Apple CarPlay or Android Auto is that you don't even have a map up. Like even if I don't put anything into the nav, I like to just have the map, like just for reference. And so that's, I haven't really enjoyed the N-Tune situation. But that's what it has. So
it's got N-Tune but doesn't have nav.
Well, the nav is part of N-Tune.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know.
So you have to use an app to.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. You have to use their N-Tune app.
Right.
In order to have nav.
And to do that, you have to have an N-Tune account.
Right. And all that stuff.
And in our case, if we don't own the vehicles, I've tried in the past. You can do it, but it's kind of a hassle to set up an N-Tune account.
Really?
And get it. Yeah.
What? No, I just don't like. Who thinks of these things? Why would I want an N-Tune? I guess that the account probably helps. I guess if you wanted to look up stuff on your phone and send it to the car.
There's other functionality, that they provide, that is specific, to your vehicle and your account, for things like vehicle health reports and things like that.
It's just another password to forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
another email that like they sell your name to some other lists or whatever. The reason why I ask is that with the hybrid, it has predictive efficient drive, is what they call it. And so it's using the nav to analyze where you go and compare it to its GPS map and adjust the behavior of the powertrain so that it is trying to regen as much as possible and be as efficient depending on what the conditions are. If you're going on curvy roads and stuff, it'll try to put as much back into that battery as possible. And it also, I think what it does is it analyzes when to charge as well, or it analyzes how you charge your consumption. So
yeah,
that seems really interesting.
There's constantly the power flow is always up on the screen, which again I tried to kind of keep an eye on to see could I get some more regen from the brakes. When was I coasting? When was it more efficient? So. I think, for people that this is a priority for, I think it's a really good choice. But I do think that there's some quality of experience that you're compromising on as well. So I wouldn't classify it as a non-compromising hybrid. It's or transparent hybrid either. I'm very aware that I'm in a hybrid CVT vehicle.
So beyond that, though, it's a compromise in terms of the drive, but
right.
Everything else is, all the things that make the RAV4 popular. I'm assuming you're not giving up cargo space for the batteries. Otherwise, it's just a RAV4.
Right.
Aside from again, the tailgate release.
Right. And again, the styling is, I mean, this is probably one of my favorite RAV4s in a while. The styling is very expressive. It's a lot of fun. It looks great. It's comfortable. It's very comfortable to ride in. It's quiet. There's a lot of things that are good about it. And I really am, I'm very curious to drive a non-hybrid to see how it is. It's kind of all the things that you want from a Toyota. So, I think it's probably going to be really reliable. It has, nice features in it, good pricing. So there's a lot of really good things about it. And I definitely would like to see about driving a non-hybrid to just experience that.
It looks like the hybrids are all-wheel drive. They're standard. All-wheel drive is standard.
Yes.
And the pricing starts at just $28,000. So that's not too bad.
That's actually a really good price for the hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a very good value. The one that I have is all dolled up. And so I think it's probably in that 35 range.
You got the limited?
Yes. Yeah. I think I have the limited.
So 35.7 plus, $1,000 for the delivery charge. So 36, 37 grand. So that's not bad.
It's the average price of a vehicle, right? I mean, it's exactly average. It does have a charging pad that's very accessible, which I like as well. The cluster in the front, the steering wheel's comfortable. The cluster gives some good information. It's, so overall there's, knobs for the radio is very easy to change. So there's, the controls are easy to understand. There's a lot of really good things about it for sure. I love the size of it. It's terrific to zip around town. And as I said, there's plenty of cargo room in it. So I think there's a lot of really, really good things about it. This size vehicle is incredibly popular, but the RAV4 and the Honda CR-V are absolute stalwarts in this category.
Is the RAV4 the most popular or the best-selling Toyota?
I don't think it is
I don't
yet.
think so.
No. I think it's third behind Camry and Corolla. It might be second now.
Yeah. Those two are going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, still. But no, it's been good. I've had it for, as I said, I've had it for 2 days, and I'll definitely check out some more of the features as this weekend in particular.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next car, Sam. The Maxima SR. So we talked about the Maxima a little while ago because it's new, and we were kind of scratching our heads because actually the Ultima's bigger.
I mean the Maxima is. Has got a refresh for 2019 model year.
Well, when they refresh them, they put out the press release and they say all new. No matter what, it's all new. First ever.
In this case, I don't think they did use first ever or all new. They announced the 19 at the LA Auto Show in November, and I don't recall seeing the words all new or first ever. It's just a mid-cycle refresh. It got some tweaks to the grille, got some interior tweaks. Nothing major, but it's not that it didn't really need much. I really like the Maxima.
It's a very expressive car. Yeah, it looks. I think it looks, actually, to me, it looks very French. It just has that. Yeah, it has that swoopiness to the style.
Yeah, no, and it's quite fun to drive. It's still got the classic Nissan VQ 3.5 liter V6 transverse mounted. It's front wheel drive with their Xtronic CVT, and Nissan does CVTs about as well as anyone. It behaves more or less like a conventional step ratio automatic transmission, so you can't really tell that it's a CVT. And the SR is the sportier model, although sportier is a relative thing here because regardless of which trim level you get, they all have the same powertrain in them, and so it's not going to be any quicker really. So the SR has a little bit sportier interior look. It's got this contrast stitching, is orange orange stitching against the black leather. It's really nicely done interior. The one I had has the the sunburst. What do they call it?
Sunset Drift.
The Sunset Drift Chroma Flare.
Chroma Flare.
Yeah.
Chroma Flare.
Which is quite it's not a subtle color, but I actually really like it. It's a good color, and I think it works really well with the black wheels, the black 19-inch alloys. So I like the styling. I generally like the drive experience, although this particular SR, the ride quality seemed stiffer than I recall on previous Maximas that I've driven. And this time of year in Michigan, the roads do tend to get a little bumpier as a result of frost and freeze and thaw cycles, and so it did not feel plush. Let's put it that way. It was not terribly uncomfortable, but I think it could have used maybe a little bit of retuning on the damping to give it a little bit more compliance. But aside from that, I didn't really have any other complaints about it. It's got this new one has one of the updates is it's got Nissan's latest infotainment system, which is the same interface you'll find in all the other current Nissan stuff. It's fine. It's not the cleanest interface out there. It's not. I don't think it's as good as, say, the Hyundai Kia UI, but it works okay, and it does have support for Android Auto and CarPlay. Although, when you plug it in, some different vehicles, different brands have different. It takes a different amount of time once you plug in your phone for it to actually bring up the Android Auto interface. And on Hyundais and Kias, it usually comes up almost instantaneously. But on this Nissan, it was a little bit slow to come up. But once it did, it worked fine. I had no issues with it. So if I when I started the car and went to back out of the driveway, it usually was not the Android Auto interface wasn't up before I shifted into reverse and started to back up. And then you get the backup camera view until you put it in drive. So, I couldn't select what I wanted to hear unless I sat there and waited for, 10 or 15 or 20 seconds before it finally came up.
Well, it's got to steal all the data from your phone before and send it to the mothership. That the one thing about Nissan UI and infotainment is they've been remarkably consistent over the 10 plus years I've been driving their media cars. I remember the first Nissans I had they had nav, and up until a few years ago it was really, really similar, and not in a bad way. Like their speech recognition system was always pretty good, and the systems weren't necessarily as deep as what you'd get out of, say, the Ford systems, like especially Sync 3 now is probably a lot more capable. But because they were limited, they did what they did pretty well, And so is that still the case? Does it still sort of feel like, like you get in and you go like, oh yeah, this is a Nissan. This feels like home. I know what to do with this stuff.
And it's after a couple of days, you quickly understand where everything is and how to use it, and so it's not really a problem. It's not like some systems, where it just never feels comfortable. This one, after a day or so, it feels fine, and it's reasonably responsive. Aside from just the boot up time for Android Auto, the rest of the system, the screen is responsive, and it. When you swipe through or tap on anything, it reacts right away. So that's not an issue, and it doesn't have the really terrible screen that I've seen that like the Leaf had when I drove that last year, which was just it was just a bad quality display. It was the same user interface, but it just the actual display itself was a very cheap display that didn't look good. This one was a much better looking display. And, since this is, Nissan's quote unquote 4-door sports car, it has, big paddle shifters behind the steering wheel and
For the CVT.
Yeah. And they're the style that are mounted on the steering column, so more, performance oriented style rather than the ones that are actually attached to the steering wheel. So they're stationary and they stay, so they're the big long paddles.
Yeah. So this is a matter of great debate. Where do you come down on this? I feel personally that if you're going to have the paddle shifters, they should be attached to the proper transmission, but also they should be attached to the steering column like Nissan does it, because you always know where they are. If they're attached to the wheel, and they should be long like the Nissan ones. A lot of them.
Well,
are
if you're gonna
ones.
have them fixed on the steering column, then they do need to be long. So that when you're making, smaller steering inputs, you don't have to move your hand around on the steering wheel. Your hands can stay in the same place as you turn the wheel, and then you can still reach your fingers out and tap those paddles. If you're using, if they're mounted on the steering wheel itself, then you can have short paddles. So yeah, these are the proper style, I think.
Okay.
All it needs is a proper transmission to go with them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still confused why they don't just put the GTR powertrain in the Maxima if they want to make it a 4-door sports car. And this one especially, it sure is orange. I look at that color. It's quite a striking color. Does yours also have the quilted leather, and the interior in pictures looks really posh?
Yeah, no, it has the quilted leather and everything, and it's a very premium looking interior.
Yeah,
so
very interesting details.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I did not have any complaints about that. Really, the only complaint I had was just about the ride quality. I thought was a bit on the stiff side.
I wonder if that's because the car is a bit on the old side.
That could be. I mean, like I said, they just did a refresh, so I mean that's the sort of thing that you can easily update during a mid-cycle refresh, change some damping and change some spring rates. But I think it's more because this was an SR version, and they just wanted to give it that sportier feel.
Okay, all right.
There's actually the platinum version that's one up from this.
Right, and I think that's a more luxurious setup than the SR.
Do you think that the suspension would be softer on that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to try it.
Yeah, I'll have to check into that.
Well, speaking of sporty things that have soft rides, I have the F-150 Raptor that is, it's a truck stang. It really is. It's very sporty in that sort of off-road way that the Raptor is. You just want to drive over everything because it will do it. I backed out of the drive when we still have some snow here, so I turned a little too soon and just drove over like a 2-foot tall snowbank without much of a problem. Just a little bounce. It's like, I guess I drove over the snowbank. You just drive around crushing things with it. And
That's awesome.
It's great at what it does. It's definitely not the truck for me, because it's big and it's obnoxious and it's hard to place in its lane because it's so big, and it's really not. A lot of people buy them and they use them as a regular car,
which seems insane to me, but
it is because it's set up to be soft, so it's comfortable actually, and it's quiet in the cabin, but it's got those big tires on it, and so it tram lines a bit, and it's you got to keep a firm hand on it because it's about as good as it's going to get.
Why is it set up to be soft?
Because when you're going 80 miles an hour over the sand dunes in Baja, you want that compliance.
We do that every weekend, right?
Yeah, but
of course.
Yeah,
sure.
the softness is, I think, because it's really like, if you want to think of it as an off-road truck, it's kind of like a pre-runner.
Okay.
So it's really well suited to being out in that sort of like desert racing environment where you can go kind of flat out, and it can just skip right along and spend, like 60% of its time airborne.
Yeah, I mean, this thing's got a huge amount of wheel travel and, a lot of articulation in the suspension. So, I mean, it can go over it goes over all this stuff without any issue at all.
Yeah.
And the Ford likes to talk about the Fox dampers that they put on there, and it works great on those.
No, you look at this truck and you see where all the money went.
Oh yeah,
because those Fox dampers are very, very good. They're also, very nice to look at. They're just a nice piece of hardware, and they are not cheap. So there's that. There's a lot of aluminum, heavy duty aluminum stuff in the suspension. The lower control arms in the front are these big, long castings. It's it's impressive, and it's got the 3.5 liter EcoBoost in it. That's definitely plenty powerful. It doesn't sound like the V8s did. The V8 Raptor had that roar that was really nice. But with the 3.5 EcoBoost, it's got a lot more torque down low. It's got the 10-speed auto, so it settles down pretty well, and it gets just as terrible fuel economy, so it doesn't really matter. But I have a hard time with it because it's just such a handful. It's about as good as it's going to get in terms of being easy to drive, and it is pretty easy to drive. It's just it wanders. If you're not constantly kind of watching it, it's going to drift over to the shoulder. It's going to, and you get this big wide truck with flared fenders and big tires, and it's tall. I was a little concerned. The fleet guy was actually concerned too that it wouldn't fit in the parking garage when he dropped it off. So I said, yeah, just leave it around the other side of the building. And it made it. I tried it the next day, and the antenna bounced off the ceiling. But it's a truck that's very popular, and I guess it's the but you could kind of factor of it. I don't think they're used as much for what they can do as what you could do with it. And it's a big thing to have off-road if you're doing some rock crawling or something like that. It's a lot of truck. It's got a long wheelbase with the four-door cab, so people are going to buy them, and Ford's going to make a lot of profit.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that can rock crawl, but it's really not as well suited to that as a Wrangler, because it is so big and wide. But it can go just about anywhere. But it's better suited to that kind of open desert environment.
Yeah, these are very popular.
Dunes.
If you do like snowmobiling or something like that, you see a lot of them hooked up to recreational trailers, and that pulling stuff that's not super heavy.
Jet skis and snowmobiles and things like that. Yeah, we see them here all the time. Heading up to northern Michigan during the wintertime. Yeah,
it's a good UP truck.
Yep.
I think it looks great.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I love the stance.
Yeah, and the one that I've got is this. I think it's like Ford Performance Blue.
Oh yeah, that's gorgeous.
It's really, really nice looking. They definitely nailed the styling. It's very aggressive looking. It's super comfortable and quiet inside. The cab is huge. The seats are really nice. Which is sometimes an issue with Ford. Ford seats can kind of feel cheap sometimes. These are nice. And I'm impressed with how refined it feels. It's quiet. It definitely has the high travel suspension and the big tires and wheels on it, but it doesn't jiggle a lot. It's very rigid. I guess as rigid as a full frame truck can be. So it feels really quite refined going down the road. And it's quiet. It's a lot quieter than I recall of the earlier Raptors being. So it's a nice place to be. I still don't think the interior feels like it should cost as much as it costs, because it like you look around and you go, okay, these same pieces are in the XL, 22. And I think Ram does interiors better, but Ram doesn't make a Raptor. They only make a Rebel. Which is not quite.
The Rebel is not quite as high a performance vehicle as the Raptor, but it is a lot of fun to drive off road. I drove it off road last year out in Arizona, and it was a hoot, and it's pretty quick.
Yeah, and it has that V8 roar
that
you can't get in the Raptor anymore. So, it's hard to really say a bad thing about the Raptor. It's the F-150, which is a pretty good truck, and it's set up the way people want it. You know, Ford knows what people want. So it's been a tremendous sales success, and you can tell why. The really, my biggest issue with it is that the interior materials feel chintzy, and that's my biggest complaint about every F-Series. No matter what they cost, they all feel kind of cheap inside. And it was weird to me to read Car and Driver did a comparison of the top 3 domestic brand trucks, and Ram certainly came out on top, but they seemed really impressed with the F-Series interior as well. And I thought that was strange because it doesn't measure up.
Well, you know, you got to compare it to a GM.
I wish I could. Yeah, I've heard they're not good.
They're not as good as their competition. Let's put it that way, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that Ram really upped the bar when it comes to the interiors.
Oh, that 2019 Ram 1500 is such a nice truck.
Yeah, and now with the new tailgate, it's that much better. But yeah, I think I didn't have as much problems with the GM pickup truck interiors as others. I mean, I think there's some good things about them. I like the size of the knobs if you're wearing work gloves and stuff like that. But the materials are just something that it's like just improve that a little bit. Just get that right. And GM continues to struggle with some of their interiors. It's a little frustrating.
Well, and the GM thing too is like it's probably not any less expensive. It's probably actually more expensive, but it looks cheaper.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, actually the ergonomics are a good point. In the F-Series here, there's a lot of little buttons on the stack, and I'm sure Ford has done a pretty good job of making sure that you can use most of it with gloves, because that's a big deal, and that's why the door handles are so big on the trucks, and the shifters is also rather large, because that is an issue if you're going to use it as for work, and those parts just carry over.
It looks like the steering wheel looks super busy on the Raptor. There's a lot of buttons on it.
It's got a lot of buttons. Yeah, they're not hard when you like. Some of them you're not using all the time. So
Sure.
there's a button there to adjust the variable steering feel. There's another one. There's the pair for the phone. So you only really use those when you're making or dropping a call. So it's not like you need to be futzing with it all the time, but there's also those multi-directional buttons that I don't know what they all do.
Yeah.
That's to swipe up and down on the pages on the instrument cluster and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's the left side. The right side actually does the audio system.
Yeah.
But the audio system is not too far away, and it has knobs, which makes it easier to use than push buttons on the steering wheel. And a lot of times I find that like if you're listening to the radio, using if you wanted to switch stations, it'll only switch through presets. And some cars let you set that, but a lot of them don't. And so I tend not to use them because, like, when I want to switch, I generally want to scan. I don't want to jump from preset to preset. But yeah, that's not that bad. The Sync 3 system was actually surprisingly pokey. And I don't know whether it was just like once I started it up and like Sam, you were saying, where you get in and you do your sort of initial thing, like you select whatever you're listening to if you're listening through your phone and get that all buttoned up before you go. And sometimes the systems are still kind of going through their power on self tests and whatever behind the scenes, so it takes them a little while to respond. But it was annoyingly pokey. Like noticeably so, but generally it's fine. So there's just been a couple of times where it's been laggy, and so I'll keep an eye on that and see whether it's just like a startup thing or if it's just sometimes you catch it flat-footed.
Yeah, it's I've generally had pretty good success with Sync 3. It's usually pretty responsive, so maybe there was some particular issue with the one you're driving, or maybe they've had some software update that caused an issue since the last time I drove one.
I don't know. XM updated while I was using it tonight. It's just like XM has been updated, like Skype updates. We've improved your experience, except for we haven't.
Hey, it's just like a Tesla. You're getting over-the-air software updates.
Right. That's great. No, I mean it's certainly it's a really good truck.
Just hope they don't update your brakes while you're driving.
Yeah. This one still has hydraulic brakes. It's fine. All of that stuff feels great. You know, driving wise, it's faultless, and so they did the right stuff on it. And they, until somebody actually comes up with a credible competitor, they're going to own the market for sports car trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when Ram finally brings out the Power Wagon, or not the Power Wagon, what did they call the? Do you remember what they called that one, Rebecca? The high performance truck. They confirmed last year at the Capital Markets Day that they're going to introduce it next year.
Oh.
The Power Wagon's the off road heavy duty. Anyway, Ram's bringing out one next year, so we'll see how that one does against the Raptor.
I'll try and dig it up.
Yeah.
Okay. The Warlock is the that's a version of the 1500, the old 1500. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Rebel? No.
No, the Rebel's the current light duty off road.
Yeah.
But it's not a high performance one.
Ah, okay.
Anyway, let's move on.
All right. Well, let's talk about sports cars though. So the mid-engine Corvette that has been a rumor for 45 years.
The Don Sherman has been hunting for 45 years.
What's his obsession with that?
I honestly don't know. He, as long as I have known Don, actually far longer than I've known Don. I've been reading Don's stories about the mythical unicorn known as the mid-engine Corvette. And you know, he's been convinced, you know, for decades that this thing was coming. And for a while, for quite a while, you know, when the first prototypes, when we started seeing the first spy photos of the what appears to now be a reality, I was thinking that, you know, GM was just trolling Don, and they had just built a couple of tube frame cars, you know, just to drive them around, you know, throw some camo on it and just drive them around, just, you know, where they knew the spy photographers were going to be, just to get Don's goat. But it does appear now that they actually really are doing this one. And so, you know, the question is, you know, when are they actually going to introduce it? I mean, we've been seeing photos of this thing for so long. And Don's now writing for Haggerty Insurance's magazine.
Oh, he's not writing for Car and Driver anymore?
Nope.
Oh, those guys have vacuumed up everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Haggerty's been growing like crazy.
Yep. So his latest article on the mid-engine vet for Haggerty, he goes through some of the reasons why it was delayed. And the most interesting recent one, you know, there was some rumors a few months ago that there were issues with the electrical system, which we'll come back to in a minute. But more recently, you know, there's what Don has dug up is apparently there have been issues with the on the high performance version of this thing, which is reputed to have a twin turbo V8 with between 900 and 1,000 horsepower. That it has got so much torque it's twisting the back end of the chassis and cracking the glass panel over the engine, which is not good. That's not the kind of thing you want in, you know, 1,000 horsepower sports car.
Yeah.
So what actually causes that?
I guess, you know, if the rear end structure, you know, depends on how this thing is set up, you know, but if the rear structure is not stiff enough, or perhaps if it's too stiff, you know, I mean, that's also a potential problem, because what it may be is, you know, if it's too stiff, you know, it could also transmit, you know, when you rev a really powerful engine, you know, you're going to get some twisting of the engine, you know, the drivetrain. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if it, depending on how the structure of the supporting that is set up, you know, it's going to transmit some of those forces, especially as you accelerate. So you got the combination of the engine itself is going to twist. And then when you're trying to put down, you know, 900 to 1,000 horsepower through just two wheels, there's also going to be a lot of reaction forces from the suspension, you know, and the tires. And so that can cause the rear structure to twist and potentially shatter that rear glass.
Yeah, but you'd
Crazy.
think that they would like have run it through. I mean, whatever they're using to, the like finite element analysis and stuff, just to see like, are we going to turn this thing into a banana boat or what? So that I was very skeptical about that particular passage. It's just like, is this just hyperbole nonsense? Just to throw us off the center?
It certainly seems like it might be.
It seems so strange to me. Like we're going to get to this point where we've had prototypes, ostensibly running around for a couple of years, and they don't know about reaction torque.
Yeah. I mean, and like I say, it may be something that has only come up as they've started testing, this higher performance version. Who knows? It's hard to say. It could be any number of things. But back to the electrical issues, one of the things that they've done in this car is apparently it's one of the first to have this a new global electrical architecture that GM is implementing across its new models. And, there apparently have been some issues with it. There's not a lot of detail on exactly what's new here. But, a lot of modern cars, have as many as, 100 to 150 individual little computers scattered around the car to control everything, from your power seats to mirrors and, the powertrain and transmission, suspension and lights and everything else. And all these things have to talk to each other. And, if that doesn't all work smoothly, then that's going to cause problems. And I guess today Jalopnik got wind of Corvette prototype that was at a gas station in Milford, Michigan, near GM's Proving Grounds. And apparently the guys driving it could not get it restarted. And they were messing with it for about 20 or 30 minutes before they pulled out the cover, put it on, and waited for a tow truck to come over from the Proving Grounds and haul it back. And actually, going back to my engineering days, I've actually had experiences like this. Fortunately, it never happened to me, outside of the Proving Grounds, but I've had it happen, when I was driving at the Proving Grounds, doing testing. And, this was when I was working on the brakes for the two-mode hybrid version of the Saturn Vue, which never made it to production. Got canceled before it made it to production. But there were on a couple of different occasions, as I was driving along, it just died. Everything just went, all the lights went out.
That sounds like the standard Saturn experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no,
I mean, kind of like a Corvette with electrical problems. Gosh, I'm shocked.
It was more like, the classic British sports car experience. But,
yeah.
It's like everything just shut down and it would not restart. And all I could do, on a few occasions I was, if I waited for 10 or 15 minutes, I could get it to restart. But there were a couple of times when I actually had to call back to the garage and have a truck come out and push the test car I was driving back to the garage. It was that dead. So, when you've got something this new, it's not unusual to have these kinds of problems. Although as late as we are in this program, it does seem a little bit odd. You'd think that they would have had these kinds of things sorted out by now. But that's probably why they still haven't launched this thing.
That's probably not the only reason why they haven't launched it. I mean, and to like that story about it being broken down, I was a little bemused to see it pop up in like breaking news coverage. The Corvette prototype test mule breaks down. It's like, yeah, no kidding. That's what test mules do. Like, it's not a big deal. It doesn't mean they're all going to be lemons. It just means that like it, this particular one broke.
That's why you do development testing. You want things to break during development, not when they're in customer hands.
Right. And if it's a really efficient car like an Alfa Romeo, it'll do both. Yeah, so I guess we really are going to get a mid-engine Corvette. Is that finally going to happen?
It certainly seems that way. That would appear to be the case.
They're not going to do like Corvette Classic and then like Zora or whatever they want to do.
Well, They apparently they are going to continue to build the C7 for a while, and the plant in Bowling Green has been set up to build both the C7 and the C8. And the latest rumors from Mr. Sherman are that 900 horsepower version will be maybe called the Zora, after Zora Arkus Duntov, who was the original chief engineer on the Corvette from like 1955 up through the early 70s, I think, when he retired, or mid 70s. I think he retired about 75 or 76,
So it's his fault.
Yeah,
he was talking about the mid-engine rotary engine.
Yeah, he built the first mid-engine Corvettes. Back in I think the first one, like the Serv 1, the CERV 1, was actually about 1957 or 58, and they built a bunch of them throughout the 1960s and into the 70s. And only after he retired did they finally slow down the pace of mid-engine Corvettes. But for a while, they're in the mid 70s, they were very close to doing a mid-engine Corvette powered by a 4-rotor rotary engine. But that program got killed.
And that's why we have AMC Pacers with the 4.2 liter 6 in them.
That's right. Because
which was not supposed to go there.
That car was designed for a GM rotary engine.
It never happened. Yeah. That's that whole 70s optimism around the Wankel was interesting. It's like the EV craze now, and it just maybe not quite as overheated.
Yeah. Well, back when I was in school at GMI in the late 80s, I studied engine design, and in the engine lab, in the storage room in the back of the engine lab, there was one of those prototype Wankels was actually sitting on a shelf in there, and me and a couple other guys actually toyed around with doing an independent study class one semester and seeing if we could get that thing running again.
Did you succeed?
No, we never did get around to it.
That's too bad.
We had other priorities.
Graduation's so overrated.
Oh yeah, there was that too.
Right. All right.
Enough Corvette.
Yeah, let's talk about electric pickups that continue to look like they really have their act together. Rivian, just from the outside looking in, they seem like a really impressive company that has a lot on the ball. And so the most recent thing that we've seen from them is a modular design for their sort of truck platform. So you could switch it around to be like a flatbed or a normal truck bed, or almost like a truck bed with a cap, or like a more traditional SUV. So, I mean, this is like looking at it's like this echoes everything that was like the 50s great optimism for the new space age better living through chemistry cars, and they just seem to be really sharp about bringing that kind of thing back and making it updated for the actual 21st century.
Well, I love the modular pickup truck bed. I mean, I think the renderings of it are really, really cool. And I don't know how feasible it is, but the flexibility that it's demonstrating in terms of different usages, different configurations, I think it looks really, really great.
It's a fantastic idea. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the animation of the renderings right now, and the biggest issue I can see with it is the same thing that you get like when you have a Jeep with the hardtop. Is where do you store all the different pieces, because they're big.
Sure, they are big, and I wonder, like in particular, looking at the full SUV module, how easy is it to get on and off, and how does it connect? Has it all kind of connect in with each other? Even the low side pickup box. So I'd be really curious to see how these interact. But I think the idea of all these different modular systems is brilliant, and it just looks really terrific.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, like you say, the execution and how you're actually going to utilize these pieces. Where you're going to stash them. and that tends to be a problem. I mean, various companies have tried, approaches to, modular vehicles or interchangeable body panels over the years. Back in the early '90s, I think, or maybe late '80s. I don't know if you remember the Nissan Pulsar.
Yeah, with the wagon.
Yeah, so they, the base Pulsar had sort of a hatchback kind of setup, and then they had a wagon body style on, or a wagon cap that you could put on there. It was, kind of a little shooting brake, and the idea was you could buy both and swap back and forth depending on what your needs were. And I don't think anybody ever actually did that, but it was an interesting idea.
Yeah, there's other ways you can make that work too. Like we've seen consumers get really comfortable with the idea of subscriptions and services, right? So it could be that, and you're not doing like what Porsche is doing, or like subscribing to the car line, right? That other automakers are also doing. You're subscribing to a truck bed. So you could go to your Rivian dealer and do a subscription
model. That would be
model,
an interesting approach.
And swap it out. And then they because then you could have the central location for the unit, and you could have trained staff that can get them, on and off quickly, make sure that all the, the electrics and stuff hook up correctly, and you could have the rig to do it with the room, because not everybody's going to put a hoist in their garage, right? So,
right.
And not everybody has a garage, so. There's clever ways to do this stuff, and I think that's something that solving that is going to be the key to it. You can design these kind of things all day long, but whether or not it actually catches on, it really comes down to execution and how easy you make it for the buyer. So that's what I'm curious to see.
And the electric skateboard chassis that the Rivian truck has, makes it inherently easier to do something like this.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if this is enough, if they do execute this well, would it be enough to bring people into the brand? Because it does provide a tremendous amount of utility and flexibility. Especially if you can make it, I don't know what the SUV unit looks like, but if it adds seats or something, or just, it's a very, very intriguing model to look at. I remember when I saw them at the LA show.
It was in LA.
Something, right? And just thinking about the brand and thinking about people, and pickup truck buyers in particular, as we've talked about before, are very loyal. And so, is this an opportunity to get maybe Honda Ridgeline buyers over there instead, or even Tesla buyers into this brand? Because you need to get people that are very early adopters, more risk oriented, willing to try a really unknown brand and plunk down a ton of money for that. So it'll be interesting to see the type of buyer that goes after this vehicle, or once they start taking deposits, who really executes on it.
Yeah, the key, I think, is to not get too far out there with gimmicks, the gee whiz wow stuff. And, we've seen Tesla actually get too far in that direction versus, doing something really that's solid from a usability and a consumer perspective. Rivian already has the attention of, I think, potential buyers, and certainly those of us who watch the industry, that their product looks really good and it's really well thought out, and we're all pretty impressed with what we've seen so far. If they execute all of the basics in a solid way, where do you get them? How much do they cost? How easy are they to get? Are they, how easy is it to service? What's the parts and support network? All of the things that we're watching some of these other companies fall down on, those have to be really, really well done. And then maybe talk about how you implement your swappable modular bed thing. Like that's a cool thing to have. But if the rest of the experience sucks, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's move on to speaking of experiences that suck.
I was waiting for it.
Cadillac's new badging. Because it just wasn't confusing enough.
This is so we in the this sort of like media production business notice this every time there's like a new CMO that comes into a company, whether it's one of our own companies or whether it's like a client company, right? The first thing they do is rub their smell on it by changing the brand.
I like that. Rub their smell on it.
Seriously. They like, you know what? We're gonna do a new logo and a different
like
tagline.
a dog that's got to mark his territory.
It's exactly what it is, and it's like, you know what? We're gonna take this company that really needs to be concentrating on other stuff, and we're gonna burn a bunch of time and energy doing something that doesn't matter, but that I can point at that I did. And so we're gonna change the logo, we're gonna change the tagline, we're gonna put out something that everybody can notice. And I can say that I was responsible for it. And that's what this feels like, because Cadillac just got rid of Johan Denishin not too long ago. They've decided...
A year ago.
Yeah, that's not too long in the car business. It depends. But for Cadillac, it's not that long. They decided that they no longer want to be down in Manhattan. And they were like very focused on being the meatpacking district car company. And so now they're back in Detroit, which is like, that's fine. But they feel the need to confuse people. I don't get it.
Okay. So let me defend what they're doing here.
Why don't we explain what they're doing first?
Yeah. Okay. So, in the past, Cadillac and other manufacturers, they have often put badges on the cars to indicate, which engine is in the vehicle. So, for example, on an ATS, you can get it with a 2-liter turbo or a 3.6-liter V6 or a 3-liter twin turbo in the ATS-V. So you would have a 2.0 T badge or a 3.6 badge or a 3.0 TT badge on the trunk lid. Now, what Cadillac has decided to do is they're actually not the first to go down this path. Audi actually started doing it a couple of years ago in Europe. They haven't brought it over here yet, but they're doing it in Europe, which is as they're starting to think about the future when they're going to have more electrified powertrains. How do you describe those on the car? How do you indicate, what kind of powertrain is there?
Do you need to? Do you need to indicate the powertrain?
That is one argument, is that you don't need to do that. Alternatively, if you do want to indicate that, how do you do that, across a range of different types of powertrains, like, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, battery electric version. And what Audi came up with was to have a 2-digit number code that corresponded to the power output of the powertrain. So regardless of what whether it had an electric drive or a plug-in hybrid drive or anything else, it would have this scheme. Now let me find it here. So the numbers ranged for Audi ranged from 30 up to 70. And they kind of binned the power numbers. So anything with a 30 had between 110 and 131 horsepower. 45 would be 230 to 250 horsepower, and so on. And 70 would be for anything with 540 horsepower and up.
So German and complicated.
Well, that way, if you had a 70, like a Q8, 70, regardless of whether it had a twin turbo V6 or a plug-in hybrid or an electric powertrain, you knew that it had power in that range. Cadillac is kind of doing the same thing, but instead of, numbers that don't exactly correspond directly to the power, they're just using the torque output of the powertrain in Newton meters, which of course everybody in the U.S. understands what a Newton meter is, right?
I mean, so here's the thing. We don't use the metric system here unless you're buying drugs on the black market. So nobody's going to get this. Nobody's going to understand it.
Well, and
Probably
it's actually,
not.
And the thing is that I think it actually could alienate some people, that domestically oriented consumer that goes in and is told, oh, we're doing this because we're trying to appease the global market and it's metric. And I can just see some, particularly older buyers being like, no, this is a domestic luxury brand. And that's what it should be focused on. I mean, I'm not saying that's the right attitude to have. I'm just saying I can see that attitude with some people going in to buy.
I mean, I just feel like what Cadillac really needs right now is some brand equity, because they've just blown it up like every 5 years for the last 20. So, like, they bring back the stuff.
Terrible stewards of the brand.
Yeah,
terrible stewards.
I mean, really good cars, just confused execution all the way around. Like they've got, like we talk about their sedans, right? They've got great sedans. They completely missed the boat on crossovers, and now they're playing catch up. And I don't know if the crossovers they've got are going to be unique enough. Like the XT6 that we just saw, it kind of gets a shrug. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a 3-row, it's a tight 3-row, and it's nice looking, but it's not. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually fully competitive with the brands that they're chasing. It's a step in the right direction. But like, if you really need equity out of Cadillac, like if you want Cadillac to get some notice, put friggin' like Fleetwood, Coupe de Ville, Eldorado, like all of those names. Yes, they're old, and the part of I think what they want to do is avoid that that idea that Cadillac is an old person brand, but that's history too. And what we see domestic automakers constantly doing is they just throw away models that they, spend billions of dollars to develop and brand and get mind share, and then they screw something up so that that model gets a bad reputation or something happens, and so they decide that that's not worth anything anymore. So we're going to come up with a new name, and then it's going to be the Cadillac what for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so again, for the last 15 years, we've had the Cadillac what, and they keep shifting the ground underneath us. It's like, and Audi is doing it too, to a certain degree, but also certainly Infinity. And there's just like one guy who's the reason for that. So
yeah, there is that common thread there, isn't there?
There sure is.
Absolutely.
But and I don't mean to be a traditionalist, because I certainly don't think that Cadillac needs to return to the days of the land barge, but the names resonate because they roll off the tongue for a large section of the buying public. Certainly anybody who's a little younger than me, if you're in your early or even mid 30s, you might not know all the names. But when I was...
So you're saying that instead of a 2020 Cadillac CT5, we should have a new Seville?
Sure. Why not? And nobody else has names in that segment except for Lincoln. Lincoln's bringing names back.
Right. I mean, I just think it's almost criminal that how this brand has been treated. And it's Cadillac. Like, that has meant something, for generations. And there's got to be a better way. I mean, I fear that if they were to start bringing back classic names, that then people would just say, oh, they're copying Lincoln. So I think they missed their opportunity when Lincoln was flat-footed and not doing anything. I think that, they could have brought back the DeVille. They could have brought that back. But, GM has struggled with their history, with how do they leverage their history without being stuck in the past.
Yeah.
They haven't really been able to do that very well. But I just think that there's got to be a better way than the path to success than through Newton meters. I just don't think that's.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, as a marketer, I want to take people by surprise, and so I'm looking at this going, well, okay, I would rather not put out more confusion. If this is my campaign to imagine or my thing to counsel my client on. So, you're really you're going to have to spend money to establish this in some way. If you really want it to stick and you want it to stick quickly, you're going to have to advertise on this and market on it and get people talking about it. So there's an effort that you're going to have to put behind that. And we'll see what Cadillac does. So there's talking points and that could work for you. But what probably would work better is to actually leave those powertrain designations that don't really mean anything off of the car and go with a much more a Rolls-Royce approach and be it's adequate. And if you have to ask, don't worry about it. They're all.
Then this is the wrong. If you have to ask, it's the wrong car for you.
Right. They're all good. Our performance is from, and you can't say adequate, I guess, in that range. From exemplary to stellar, or you can start building your idea around that approach. So you haven't actually spent any money to make new badges and affix them to cars and create confusion. And then, each version of that model is equally special. And really then it's down to the individual buyer to pick just the right one. So yeah, you know what? I think I want the ATS-V. And so you've got a little bit of a variation there where, of course, you're going to put the V because the V series is special, like AMG is special to Mercedes. But it's this weird kind of status symbol to put what engine your car has on it on the back of it, right? And I do this.
And and the funny thing is, in Europe especially,
they strip them off.
That a lot of people you can actually order your car without any badges.
Yeah.
You can order it from the factory without any badges, and a lot of people, if they didn't get it without badges, a lot of times they'll take the badges off. So you'll see a 3 Series, and you'll have no idea which version it is.
Well, I wonder, is that because you don't want your neighbors to know that you make enough to afford the taxes on the the big engine high performance one?
Who knows? It could be any number of reasons why. And Rebecca, maybe you have a better thought on that, but I know that's something that I noticed when I was in Europe. Is a lot of times they don't have any badges on them.
Yeah, they're very discreet in many ways. It's enough for the owner to know, what they bought, and Dan, to your point of the idea that it's adequate or it's appropriate,
right?
It's appropriate horsepower. It's kind of, this is what we do, this is what we know, and the badging is often very, very subtle in Europe, and not necessarily something that's exploited. But again, I still think that we have to respect that domestically oriented buyer and find out what they want. Cadillac is not about how to do things well in Germany. Cadillac is about American luxury, and it is the premier American luxury brand. And that's what we need to get back to. They need to, when you're rebuilding a brand, a lot of times you've got to get back to what made the brand great in the first place. And it's not a naming convention. It's not an alphanumeric number. It's not how many numbers you can put on the back of the vehicle. It's, I just think you've got to return to the roots and return to the foundation and rebuild from there.
Well, okay.
Because this brand has been battered.
So let's do a little ideation session here. Okay, so like returning to the roots of Cadillac is
no more verbifying of nouns, please.
So their most famous claim initially was standardized parts, and so they called themselves the standard of the world. Well, so if you're gonna return to that, which I think you very well could, and not to relaunch it in a retro way, but just to say we're still the standard of the world, and like we're the car everybody chases. Whether or not that's true, that's how you position it, and you say like you don't even need a badge, like it's a Cadillac. It doesn't matter. And it's true, right? We don't say it's the Cadillac DeVille of coffee pots. It's the Cadillac of coffee pots. So it doesn't matter what particular model or even powertrain it has. So you can pull that back to say it is the standard. We set the standard. We're still the standard. It's a Cadillac. It doesn't matter. You know, like that's your sort of through line. And that's all I got tonight.
No, but that's it's
so you think everything in the
simplistic.
Cadillac lineup should just be a Cadillac with no name?
No, you could have the name, of course, but like I think that getting more granular than that is kind of it's I can understand how you'd want to be like, you know, I bought the one with the big engine, but that's maybe not as important as you might think, I guess. I don't know.
I think when again, in my mind, when you are rebuilding, you simplify.
Yeah.
You don't make it more complicated for people. You simplify. The last thing you want to do is have a dealer take the time to explain all these letters and numbers. You want them to you can't be making it more complicated.
I mean, I'm trying to think. There has been a naming scheme within GM that was based on the torque of the engines in foot-pounds. I don't think it made it to the actual like model name. I think like the Electra 225 was a 225-inch car. Like that's the long Electra. But I think some of the Buick and Oldsmobile engines, the number that was on it was actually its torque rating, not its horsepower or cubic inch displacement, if I recall, back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, there's like Series 62.
Well, so the Series 62, you know, that's like the sort of limo Cadillac, right? And the 60 Special was like, so there's some of that is historic, and I think that actually went out in the 80s with Cadillac.
Well, and again, I think, you know, we don't have to solve their problems tonight, but
I mean, I would really like to do it for a paycheck. So if they'd like to call me,
exactly.
I'd love a car account.
I think the main thing is the simplification.
Yeah.
I think they've made it even more complicated when they need to go in the other direction.
Sam, what do you think? Do you want the badge in the back of the car?
No, not particularly. Yeah, like I said, I understand, you know, what they're trying to achieve with it. I don't think it's necessary. You know, and you know, as an example, you know, if you go back to the late 90s when Steve Jobs first came back to Apple, you know, before he came back, you know, the Apple lineup in the mid 90s
was a mess.
Similarly messy. You know, you had all kinds of different Performa and Quadra models, all of which had their own unique numbers that didn't mean anything. And, you know, he basically gutted the lineup, said, okay, get rid of all this stuff, you know, and there's the classic, you know, Apple thing with, you know, for you have pro and consumer versions and, you know, desktop and laptop, you know, the four quadrants that you know, but I mean, all that Apple made was phones in those, or computers in those days.
Right.
Yeah. And they ditched all the numbers. You know, you just had, you know, you had iMac, you had Power Mac, and you had, you know, PowerBook and iBook, and that was it.
Yeah.
You know, and then over time, it gradually got, you know, more complex as they expanded the lineup. But you know, still, it was fairly. They kept it fairly basic, and I think, you know, that's probably the approach that Cadillac should be taking now. Is, as you say, keep it simple. You know, just give each model a name. You know, ditch the CT and the XT branding. Give them names. You know, whether it's new names or you bring back some classic names, and then from there, that's all you need.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like a bunch of grumpy old traditionalists. I just think the names are a quicker way to capitalize on something that, there's still a ember of recognition out there, so you're probably going to have an easier time. They're going to do what they're going to do, and we're going to watch and throw stones from the sidelines. The Apple example is really apt, because even now, while they have a lot more products in their lineup, and it does get confusing when you start to compare some of that performance stuff, or if I need to repair a machine, like we've got.
Well, you don't have to do that anymore with Apple products.
Well, no, you just throw them away. But so we've got.
That's a whole other story.
We've got multiple MacBook Pros that we're supporting, and so they could even look the same and be separated by 6 months, and they're different. So like I have to go in and look and see which one it is, and if it's MacBook Pro version 11.1 instead of like 10.9, they're different. And so some of the parts don't fit, and some of the stuff is just, it's a little different. That though, like if you want it, you can find the information, and if you need it, you can find it, and you can make sense of it. And so it's the same kind of thing with the cars. And I don't know. We'll see what they do, and we'll see how well they do. I mean, the problem Apple had in the 90s too was that if you really wanted a good Apple, you'd buy a power computing.
Yeah.
Like a clone. And so it's kind of like if you want a good Cadillac, you buy a, I don't know, fill in the blank. That's the problem they should avoid. We've finished that one. We're definitely done. Hey, I want to know a couple of things, actually. I was curious what you guys thought about the mad proliferation of scooters as a mobility solution. Because everybody's really upset that they're clogging up the streets in places. And I'm curious about how much we think that that's actually like the solution to urban mobility issues. That like, Ford is investing in scooters, and everybody sees them as the kind of the next greatest thing.
I think in principle, it's not an entirely bad idea. I think that there's a lot of promise to the idea behind micromobility, and providing people with options for how to get around. I think the chaotic way that it's been rolled out over the past year, and it's funny. I'm heading out to California this week on Sunday for the NVIDIA GPU Technology Conference next week. And while I was there last year, the second day that I was there happened to be the day that they launched Bird and Lime scooters in San Jose and San Francisco. And, I walked out of the hotel and all of a sudden there's these scooters everywhere all over the sidewalk. And I had to go over and look at one and, look at the brand on it. And I pulled out my phone to figure out what the hell was going on, why there was all these scooters everywhere. And I think that, this is actually a good indicator of, some of the things that we need to do, as we approach the launch of autonomous vehicles in the coming years. We can't, and especially, autonomous mobility services, we can't just let companies just go and throw this stuff out on the road, because we're going to end up with too many vehicles that are underutilized, and we're going to make congestion worse. And, I think what we need to do is look at, how we manage how many of these vehicles, how many companies are operating in a given city, and then how they, provide some rules of the road. I think, we can do things like, provide some racks to put these things in instead of just leaving them, laying on the sidewalk. I think we can do things like create protected bike lanes, so that rather than just have a painted bike lane on the side of the road, actually put a curb on the on there that actually separates the bike lane from the traffic lane, and have bikes and get bikes and scooters on those. Because a conference I was at yesterday, I was talking to somebody who was down at South by Southwest earlier this week. They had a bunch of mobility stuff going on, and he said, you couldn't walk around the sidewalks because there was so many people riding scooters on the sidewalks instead of riding them on the street, because you don't want to ride them on the street with the cars.
Yeah, I think the natives got kind of upset about that.
Yeah, so I think you need things like protected bike lanes that scooters and bikes are allowed to use, and then they're kept separate from both the pedestrian traffic and the cars. So I think we need to have some kind of way to manage these and coordinate these services. But I think I do support the idea of it. And then of course there's the whole idea of the whole problem of the business model around these things. I think I saw like Bird, for example, they may have said that they generate about $3 or $3.50 a ride in revenue from the scooters, but right now it's costing them about $28 per ride, because the scooters are only lasting about 2 or 3 months before they have to be replaced, because they've either been damaged or worn out or stolen. So that's a real issue too.
Yeah, people aren't, there's not an etiquette to these. I mean, it's kind of like when you think about shopping carts, people don't care about shopping carts because you don't have any equity stake in a shopping cart. So you leave it on the street, you leave it wherever is convenient for you, and you rarely come back to that same shopping cart.
Well, see, now I always put the shopping cart in the thing where it's supposed to go.
I'm not saying this is my behavior. Okay. I'm saying this is the general public.
I will yell at people from behind closed windows. Yeah. I'll see them just like leave their cart there, and I'll make sure the window's up first, and then I'll start bad mouthing the person who's just lazy. I really don't want a confrontation, but like, I think that there's a general lack of courtesy, like you say, like with how people use them, but also how they've been, sort of just deployed, like, right. Quote unquote disruptively, right? Like these companies are just flouting any kind of responsibility. Like, we're just going to put these things out there like a swarm of bugs in the the urban environment and
hope for the best.
Yeah, like we're not going to check with regulators, and so they got themselves kicked out of a bunch of towns. Even here in I think like Cambridge and Somerville, they got themselves banned until they actually went through like the permitting process, and they said like, no.
Yeah, well, San Francisco did the same. Yeah. They said, okay, you can't put these things out here. You've got to apply for a permit. We're going to give permits to only 2 companies. And, so put in your applications in the next 30 days, and then we'll figure out who's going to be allowed to operate. And they set a bunch of rules, and, I think it's made it better.
Yeah.
But, I think there's still a lot of problems. Well, I mean, San Francisco's got a lot of problems anyway.
Yeah. So like if you're losing nearly $25 per ride for your thing, like
that's insane.
That's not sustainable. Like,
well, you can make it up in volume though.
Yeah. Right. But that's my question is like, thinking about Ford specifically, like their investment, they have very clearly admitted like, hey, you know what? We're a light truck company, and that's why our cars went away, because we're making the money on the light trucks. It doesn't make any sense to continue to build cars that we're going to have a hard time getting people to buy, and we're going to have to discount them anyway, so we're going to lose money on them. So let's just stop making them. That makes sense. But to see them say like, oh, scooters are this thing, it's like, no, guys, come on, you're Ford. Like, you have the ability to be more effective than these upstart companies at working with local governments and even lobbying on a federal level. You can build big stuff. Like, how about you build some freaking buses and trains and help get that stuff settled? Versus
nobody
scooters.
wants buses and trains.
And, well, yeah, they only want scooters because they think they want scooters too. Like, I get it, and it doesn't have to be just one mode either. You got to get people to the urban core from the suburbs until people start buying in the urban core, which, it's gentrifying. You can't. So we're seeing this weird population flip, right? From the urban core. They're moving out to the suburbs because the people gentrifying the cities are moving in from the suburbs. Anyway, I'm on a tangent now, like we talked about. But multimodal transportation is going to be the thing. And so scooters are, I think they are a viable, part of that. But to watch that whole other sector be ignored by a car company who's trying to figure out where they're going to fit in the next 15 or 20 years, it's like, well, there might be more demand for this big stuff too. And right now, if we need train cars, where do they come from? China, Bombardier in Canada sometimes. Like, do we build any of that stuff domestically? I don't think so. It's a question. I don't know.
Yeah. No, we don't.
Yeah. So there. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to rant.
That's what we're here for.
It felt good.
As long as it was good for you.
Yeah. I'm satisfied now. So yeah. All right. Well, we've covered quite a bit of ground. I don't know that we got any questions.
No, we didn't get any questions, but we do have one PSA, a public service announcement. Right now, as we're recording, Elon Musk is unveiling the Tesla Model Y.
Yes.
Of course, the live stream started about a half hour late, which, it is Tesla, so that's actually a pretty good time for them. But I just want to, to all our listeners out there, whether you like the Model Y or not, and if you decide you want one, I just suggest one thing. Think about what happened to, with all of the Model 3 orders that, pre-orders that people placed. They put down $1,000 deposits, and then, by the time Tesla, actually started building some serious volumes of the Model 3, they basically ditched the whole pre-order system. So putting down your deposit on the first day or the first week did nothing to get you a Model 3 any faster. So, if you want a Model Y, no problem. Go ahead, get one. But wait until they actually start building them and delivering to customers. Don't bother putting down a deposit now.
No. Listen, Elon needs your money. You got to give him the money. And you know what? You're going to have to put down your deposit, what's it going to be for the Y? Do we know? Because it was $1,000 for the 3.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be $1,000.
Okay, so $1,000.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Slap that on a credit card so that the credit card industry actually becomes a large unsecured investor in Tesla. I think they're going to love that.
Oh yeah.
Sure, build cars that are never going to come to market with our money.
They won't care because you, as the card holder, will be responsible for it, not the credit card company or Tesla.
Yeah, I guess.
You as the individual will be the unsecured creditor.
Right.
Yeah, with no equity or no. Look, if you want to invest in Tesla, just invest in Tesla. Although I understand like $1,000 doesn't buy you much of their stock. Yeah, I don't know. I will be surprised if the Y ever actually makes it to market. Everything I've seen over the last 3 months from Tesla just seemed like a stunt, like stunt after stunt.
The last 3 weeks.
No, right. Like it seems to be getting worse. Like these are just stunts to obfuscate. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I don't want to start another rant.
Let's call it a show.
All right. Well, that's good. If you want to leave us some feedback, it's on the there's the form on the site. There is wheelbearingscast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter. All of the other regular channels, we are available individually, and we'll see everybody next week.
All right. See ya.
See ya.